going to save us after all.
The reality of the world is there just aren't enough interracial couples to turn this economy around, no matter how many we find. And for weeks and months, the question and the speculation has been, will we hit a recession? We've already had 1 quarter of GDP shrinkage. 2 consecutive quarters of a shrinking economy is the formal or the commonly accepted definition of recession. So we're teetering right on it. And this week, we got the worst news, a guarantee 100% we are going to hit a recession. How do we know? Because Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says we will not have a recession.
I'm not going to announce it. I don't think we're going to have a recession. Consumer spending is very strong. Investment spending is solid. We have a very strong economy. I know people are very upset, and rightly so, about inflation, but there's nothing to suggest that a recession's in the works. It's amazing how pessimistic they are, given that we have about the strongest labor market we've had in the entire post-war period. People can easily find jobs.
But that argument's not winning the day.
It's not winning the day, I agree, because what they see is, and I think today national gas prices just hit.
It's a billboard. It's a billboard at every corner.
$5.
It's what you see. It's just
that lying Skeksis. Everything she said is incorrect. Every single thing that she said. This inflation's report is not even exaggerating, the worst one I've ever read in my life.
Well, what are you complaining about? If you can't afford things, you just get 2 jobs to try to afford the things that one job used to pay for, because the job market is so strong.
Right. And I know you used to be an engineer, but now you can get 2 part-time jobs in fast food.
Yeah.
And they've increased the number of jobs in the job market.
Yeah. So, okay, let's get into I love she says, there's no signs that we're going to hit a recession, except for that we're halfway there.
Yeah.
According to the definition, 2 consecutive quarters, economic shrinkage. There's no signs at all, except for that we shrank last quarter. In addition to everything else. But
I think that the way that they're rationalizing this is they put out these really bleak expectations. And then they're like, well, we only missed expectations by X amount. But the expectation was that inflation was going to increase and the labor market was going to shrink. Well, not the labor market. They're saying that's going strong, but that's not necessarily true. So inflation accelerated in May, prices rising 8.6% from 1 year ago.
Yeah.
Fastest increase since 1981, and the 80s were not super good for our economy. The consumer price index increased even more than the 8.3% Dow Jones estimate. And then this is excluding volatile food and energy prices, which is where we're getting hit the hardest. The core CPI was up 6%. So when you hear 8.3%, you're like, well, most of that's probably fuel and stuff. No, it's not. And that's even worse. Shelter is bad. Gas and food prices all have contributed to the increase. The energy prices rose 3.9% from 1 month ago, bringing the annual gain. It's only June, 34.6%. And within the category, fuel oil posted almost 17% monthly gain, pushing the 12-month surge to almost 107%.
Right. So like right at where gas's increase is, that's, where we're sitting.
Double.
And kind of energy overall is just gas being the driver of that.
CPI is 1/3 weighted for housing costs. That rose 0.6% for the month. That was the fastest 1 month gain since 2004. And then 5.5% 12-month gain. That was the worst since 1991. Food prices climbed 1.2%. The year-over-year gain on food is 10%. And then workers took another pay cut during May, and real wages, when accounting for inflation, still fell 0.6%, even though average hourly earnings rose 0.3%.
Yeah.
And then on a 12-month basis, real average hourly earnings down 3%. This is just terrible.
This is the best job market we've ever seen, though. Didn't you hear?
It's just incredible. And then what you said about consumer spending is not true. And this was in the jobs report. Inflation is eating away at consumers' purchasing power. Consumers' spending accounts for 70% of the U.S. economy, and a real decrease in that spending would be a huge blow to GDP, which I think we're already experiencing. And investors also are super worried about the economic downturn. They're worried that interest rates are going to go up again, which they will. And so the Dow closed 888 points down for the day. I believe on Friday. That's 2.5%. S&P 2.7%. NASDAQ 3%.
That was just Friday's drop.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, Biden, after hearing of these numbers, he was at the Port of Los Angeles for an event. And he took to the podium and in part of his speech reacted to the numbers with just the usual, a series of preposterous excuses and scapegoats and bizarre explanations. Of course, this is a global problem. That's the New York Times headline here. Biden visits Port of Los Angeles, casting inflation as a global problem. So, what are you going to do about it? Everyone in the world is suffering. And besides, it's Putin's tax hike. We've heard that many times before. We're just going to go with that. And now, apparently, it's the fault of Asian shipping companies who have jacked up their prices. But of course, don't worry about it. Joe is calling on Congress to crack down on, I guess, big Chinese boating.
But we've never seen anything like Putin's tax on both food and gas. America should also understand our economy has unique strengths that we can build on. The job market is the strongest it's been since World War II, notwithstanding the inflation. Inflation outside of energy and food, what the economists call core inflation, moderated the last 2 months. Not enough, but it moderated, it's come down. There are nine major ocean line shipping companies that ship from Asia to the United States. These companies have raised their prices by as much as 1,000%. That's why I called on Congress to crack down on their foreign-owned shipping companies that raise their prices while raking in just last year $190 billion in profit.
Well, if they can do this, then why wouldn't they?
If the companies can jack up the prices?
Yeah, we don't have any manufacturing here anymore. Whose fault is that?
Well, yeah, and it's just hilarious. It's like you've spent your entire presidency discouraging American production. We have to lock down. We have to stay home. We have to crush the virus. That puts you in a position of dependence on other producers of those materials that you need. If you want to combat that, it's not to write some law that the Chinese are going to laugh at. That does nothing unless we produce our own energy and our own food, which, by the way, we do produce and have produced in massive quantities. It's not like it's
in history. It's not like this is, like we've always imported everything. We used to have manufacturing. It used to be here. It used to all be here.
And the thing I don't understand, how does Asian shipping impact fuel prices? Mm-hmm. It might impact the cost of like the cheap plastic toys or whatever the hell we're getting. And I know it's more stuff than that. But as far as fuel prices, Asian shipping, we don't depend on Asian shipping for our fuel extraction or refining, as far as I'm aware. And as far as the world experiencing all of this, that's not an excuse. Number one, European inflation has actually lagged behind the US throughout the last year. But number two, as though we're supposed to we're supposed to just look at other countries in poor position and say, yeah, that's fine. We're also in poor position. We're supposed to exceed the world's standard of living. That's what makes the US exceptional. We're supposed to do very well relative to the world, not compare ourselves to some actual shithole country and say, well, look, the cost of fuel there is also very high, or the inflation there is also very high. That shouldn't be, there's no excuse there to say the rest of the world is suffering. That doesn't mean that we have to. We should be better than that. And you also heard him mention, core inflation has actually moderated. It's gone down, he said. Let's be clear about what exactly the numbers say on that. Number one, even if it's true, who cares? When he says core inflation, that excludes energy and food. And
that's where we're getting hit and what we need the most. So who cares?
Yeah, so unless you're a person who doesn't consume energy or food, you do have to care about that. Number two, it's not even true anyway. Core inflation is not down. It's still increasing, just very slightly more slowly. So month over month, as in May compared to April, core inflation increased. Wait, let me get this right. Oh, wait, yeah. So month over month, core inflation increased 0.6%. So this May compared to April. Year over year, as in May 21 to May 2022, it was 6%. That's down from 6.2% year over year in April. So yes, be encouraged that inflation, among less important things, is increasing 0.2% more slowly. That's what we're talking about. And if you can't afford things anymore, just get 2 or 3 more jobs because so many of those are available. Things are looking great. You always love to hear this language. I've reduced the deficit, by which you mean we're still spending outside of our means.
Right, outside of our means, yeah.
At a slightly lower rate. Or core inflation is down, by which you mean it's still increasing just a little bit more slowly.
It's like an obese person being like, well, I'm not gaining as much weight as I was. It's like, well, you're still fucking fat. So what's the problem here?
Yeah, exactly. It's not losing weight. It's gaining weight more slowly. And that's viewed as a success.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
What are we going to do? What are we going to do? This is so bad. Honestly, I've read a lot of these reports and this one, I was just like, well, it's starting.
Hang on to hope that there is a necessary and deserved political correction in November. And I guess, and obviously, as long as this guy remains president, I think it's going to be a total disaster. But at least if you have a total check on him in Congress, I think there'll be some confidence for investors that at least his worst inclinations will be stopped. And maybe you'll get some confidence restored to markets and investment and all that. Maybe we can start to inch back toward prosperity. But for the next few months, there's no reason for optimism in the next few months. And that's why you're seeing everybody pull out of all sorts of investments, from the stock market to crypto to whatever. People want to have the cash on hand because who the hell knows if it's going to cost $100 for a loaf of bread by next month. I know. So you kind of got to have it. So